Our Common Destiny by Reverend David Eaton. All living substance, all substance of energy and being and purpose are united and share the same destiny. All people, those we love and those we know not of, are united and share the same destiny. Birth to death, this unity we share with the sun, earth, our brothers and sisters, strangers, flowers of the field, snowflakes, volcanoes and moonbeams. Birth, life, death, known, unknown, known, unknown. Our destiny from unknown to unknown.
We gather today to celebrate the life and mourn the death of Rosemary Parkell Hannie. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. She was an ex-wife and a wife, a runner and a president. She surrounded herself with powerful people, and although she was quiet in her own right, she always held her own. She was able to be herself surrounded by large personalities. Does that match for you or no? Yeah, okay. I'm just making sure. My name is Nathan Ryan. I am one of the ministers here at this church. Reverend Chris Long is the other. I have known Rosemary for all of the 11 years that I've been at this church. This is the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. It is Rosemary's church. It was her church for decades. In this church, there is no belief requirement, and instead, we gather together on the promise of how we will act together as religious people. For those who knew Tom's very particular atheism, this may not be a surprise that this was Rosemary's church, but it is. Here are some of the logistics of today's service. First, it is okay to laugh. Every person who was alive, brought joy into the world, and when we tell their story, it is okay to laugh as a part of it. Second, the fullness, Trey, if you would go ahead and place it right in front of the chalice. These are some of Rosemary's ashes. Second, the fullness of Rosemary deserves to be shown. That means today we should let her strengths and her weaknesses shine. The things she struggled with helped to define her as a person as much as the things she thrived at. It can be tempting to make people, after their death, into someone who is completely perfect or completely flawed. Instead, we need her to be fully human today. This is for her, and it is for all of us. Third, while Tom and Rosemary were instrumental in each other's lives, and to the best that I can tell, deeply in love, while today many of us will be grieving the death of Tom again, Rosemary is and was always her own person, and it is important that her service represent her as who she was, both as spouse to Tom Hannie and as a fully independent woman. Fourth, we will not fully retell Rosemary's story in this hour. It is impossible. Instead, it will be retold through you, the gathered people, and we are both doing this in person and online. As you hear music or readings or stories that remind you of her, your body will fire off the exact same chemicals it did when she was right in front of you. And your muscles will tighten or loosen. Your eyes will dilate in the same way they did when she was standing in front of you. So for this hour, we will not memorialize her up here. You will memorialize her, and she will physiologically be alive in your body as you are reacting to your memories of her. It is also true that Rosemary's last years were marked by her dementia. It is not fair. It is not right. Please do not let her be defined by the absence of her memory, but please do not write off her struggles at the end of her life. All of these are a part of her story. As is often the case, I do not know what Rosemary believed. I do not know if she believed in a God or if she prayed or if she thought there was an afterlife. I clearly knew what Tom believed. That was easy. But through the combination of not wanting to keep him from being his full self, and for whatever reason not finding it important to tell me or others, we are left with a mystery. What I do know, however, is that she was built of material that has existed since the beginning of time. These elements have made up stars and trees and other people, and for a brief time, these elements came together to make Rosemary. The DNA that flowed through her body was the DNA of thousands of years of people who happened to make her her. We know that the love that she shared freely with the world will continue to ripple on long after her death. We know that she will be missed. We know that she has spent decades trying to build a stronger and a more beautiful world. And we know that that will also continue on. I invite you to rise. Let's do this opening hymn. We have a ritual in this church of lighting a chalice to start our service. As we light it, I invite you to say the words printed in your order of service. With hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
Reading by Reverend Lone Jansen, Precious and Lost. Between our first cry and our last breath, we string together precious moments of life as pearls on a string. Then something or someone breaks the strand and the pearls scatter everywhere. and we were all on our knees on the floor trying to retrieve something that was precious and is now lost. A human life cannot be restrung, but we can gather together the precious memories in deep gratitude for the time we did have together. I refuse to believe that either God or the universe is cruel. That is a human failing. Instead, I trust that nothing is ever lost. Our past and present make up this moment.
So we have a choice at a service like this of inviting one person up to try to tell chronologically someone's story. We have chosen to do it differently today. Instead, we've invited 4 people to come forward and one at a time to give you a story or a snapshot of Rosemary. The goal here is not perfection. The goal is not to tell everything about her, because each of you, whether you are her sister or her friend or a coworker, each of you had a different relationship with her, and the stories are going to resonate differently. So our goal is to give you as many different snapshots to who she is. Does that make sense? So I'd like to invite, first let's have Bobby Carey come up.
Thank you. It was 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I was parked at the Stop and Go at Highland and LSU Avenue. The police might think I was waiting for a jug buy, but no, I was waiting for Rosemary Hannie. All of a sudden, and you will appreciate this black sports car going 80 miles an hour screeches to a halt at the gas station parking lot, and Rosemary jumps out with an overnight bag. This was our very first quota adventure, and her chauffeur was Tommy Hannie, a man whose nickname for me for 20 years was Trouble. Every time I called and asked to speak to Rosemary, Tommy would say, "Trouble is on the line." On this particular crisp fall morning, Rosemary had agreed to ride with me to a district quota conference in central Louisiana at the plantation home Lloyd's Hall. Rosemary was new to quota, so on the way I regaled her with quota information, as some of you know I want to do. And she told me about her travels down state highways in rickety-owned state cars when she first was working with civil service. When we got to our destination, Rosemary started charming everyone she met, and I knew then that she was a special person and a leader. Fortunately for Rosemary, she didn't know that trip would lead to many other adventures and misadventures with me for Quota Baton Rouge, Quota District 21, Quota South Area, and Quota International. She and Allison Walker accompanied me and Alan to Quota International Convention in Singapore, where Rosemary was strip searched and detained at the airport on her way back to Baton Rouge. I guess she looked suspicious. I don't know they chose her. She was on my team in Nashville when I was international president, and then it was that fateful day when I invited her to lunch at Maison Liqueur. We settled down to our iced tea when Rosemary's cell phone rang, and I could hear a male voice say, "Put her on." This voice said, "Look, Trouble, I know what you're up to and it won't work." Well, it did work, and Rosemary ran for international president of Quota, and she won. It was a tough race, but as I said, members saw what I saw that very first conference: leadership and a way to charm people. Her role as international president gave her a platform to make a positive difference in 14 quota countries through its leaders and her board. Before serving on the international level, Rosemary was the leader in Baton Rouge Club, generous with her money, generous with her time. She did many hands-on projects like Habitat for Humanity, Women's Build. I think Lynn's here somewhere today, yeah. Rosemary traveled the world as president of Quota, and she met many wonderful people, and they met her. This is what Karen Murphy, a past international president from Australia, had to say about Rosemary. All day I've been thinking about the times we shared, always so much fun when Rosemary was in the room. But there was always something zany happening. She always had a wardrobe problem with the Aussie weather. When we went to Noosie one day and it was a wet day and we were going for a walk, she came dressed in a pale pink tracksuit. The tracksuit never survived. In Geelong, at the South Pacific meeting, the air conditioning broke down and the venue was very hot. Rosemary ended up stripping off her blazer during her presentation, then her shirt, and she did the rest of her talk in her undershirt because it was so hot and humid. When I sent out the notice of Rosemary's passing, I received a lot of letters and comments. Nancy Fitzpatrick, the executive director of Quota, was very typical. She was a wonderful person and president, always kind and encouraging. I know that she will be missed by friends and family alike. Lynn Stevenson, the oldest past international president, told me one more tale. Lynn said, I remember meeting her as international rep at a district conference, and she took out the script the office had prepared. She looked at it, she looked at us members, and then she tossed it in the air. There were so many Quota stories about Rosemary, and she received almost 80 comments from people online, people that knew her. Even though Mr. Hannie protested Rosemary's office of the president, he came to love the conventions, and he developed his own following of husbands. In fact, they became some sort of a club. Tommy taught Rosemary to count cards, as you well know. She had an MBA from Tulane, and she was very mathematical. Together they accumulated a lot of Harris points. Occasionally, I got to enjoy those points in their status in the gaming world. Rosemary and I were on our way to Washington, D.C., but spent the night in New Orleans to catch our plane. We arrived at the Harris Hotel, and the desk informed us that we had to be escorted to our room on the concierge floor. Someone took us up to this luxurious suite with a fruit basket, chocolates, living room, dining room, 2 giant beds, and a shower that we could have had a party in. I told Rosemary, let's not go to Washington. Let's just stay here. But this was commonplace for Rosemary. This is how she and Tommy lived. They knew how to have fun. They had good food. They stayed at many luxurious casino hotels. Since Rosemary can't stop me because she's not here, I'm going to tell another story from her days in New Orleans before she got married. She was a runner, and she ran on the YMCA track several times a week. This short, lean man liked to run with her. As runners know, we don't generally know much about casual running partners, like what they do for a living. Rosemary liked to tell dating stories to her running companion. She was in her single days. When she moved to Baton Rouge, she was invited to sit on a dais at a banquet where the featured speaker was the newly appointed Bishop of Baton Rouge. Much to her chagrin, it was her running partner. Turned out to be Bishop Ott. She was mortified. It's a true story. Rosemary was serious and highly respected professional, so much so that she worked under the administration of 4 governors. Governor Buddy Romer brought her to Baton Rouge from the Port of New Orleans as Deputy Commissioner of Administration. We were doing a Quota open door tour, and as some of you remember those, the day after Buddy Romer was defeated, and Rosemary thought that she was headed back to the Crescent City. However, the next governor and the next governor and the next governor wanted her to stay because of her depth of knowledge and the ability to solve complex human issues. The state police used her as a consultant after she retired. If you were riding in a car with Rosemary, the only music allowed was classical. She really wanted to major in piano, but her parents said she needed a more marketable degree. But even though she didn't major in music, she loved it her whole life. She especially loved the New Orleans Opera, and she invited to go with her several times. Rosemary loved her opera friends. She cherished the friends she made during her state work. She considered her Quota friends her family and the Bonacazes her true family. Buddy, Julian, and Liz really cared for her after Tommy passed away. She loved her sister Dot, her cousin in Germany, her stepsons Mark, Trey, and Mark's daughter Ella. Ella was the apple of her eye. She was so proud of how smart Ella was. Rosemary really liked smart people. Rosemary loved her husband. She knew all of Tommy's foibles. We all did. She worshipped him anyway. She told me how they met when she was working at the Port of New Orleans. She said that she had many phone conversations with Tommy, but then he invited her to dinner. She saw him for the first time in the restaurant. She said, "I had no idea he was such a big man." That was a good description of Tommy. He was larger than life. And they created a larger than life experience together for many years, traveling, entertaining, participating in the Unitarian Church. They both enjoyed their friendships here. I also have to put a note of special interest for LSU sports. If they weren't attending games, they were watching games with their friends at home. Rosemary devoted the last few years of her life to making Tommy's life possible. She was also being proud to be part of the Hannie family. She had a small family, but she basked in the glory of the large Hannie family. She really loved them, cousins once removed and all. I know she's going to be missed. Thank you.
So up next, we're going to invite Lois Elisar, who, how long have you known her?
Since I've been in the church.
Yeah, for a long time. Come on up.
As I listen to and watch opera, I think of Rosemary Hannie. She could name the opera, the performers, and all that I could do was listen, watch, and enjoy. We shared a love for opera and would make sure we had a seat in the theater when the Metropolitan Opera came to Baton Rouge via large screen TV. She would have a seat at the highest level of seats in the theater, and I with Sam was in the lower portion of the handicapped seats. Tom preferred LSU ball games to Saturday afternoon opera, so he didn't go with her. I must say, every time I listen to or watch opera, Rosemary is with me in my heart.
I'd like to invite up Elizabeth Bonacaz.
I'm going to try to get through this. I'm Elizabeth Bonacaz, known as Lizzie, Liz, to most of my family and friends, and Rosemary. I'm Buddy and Julian's daughter, and Tommy and Rose are my family. I called her Rosemary, my mom and dad call her Rose, but she was in my life. I don't ever remember not having Rosemary. No disrespect to Trey and Mark's mom, but I was too little to remember. And I remember having this big man and this wonderful woman who took such an interest in me my whole life. I know that Carrie already mentioned that she was a smart, strong, independent woman without Tommy, but they made a great team. And Rosemary was the glue. and and the, I think, light of Tommy's life, and she was hers. She loved Mark and Trey so much. She talked to me about it for hours. She talked to me about Ella, about Julie, Todd. But I'm going to share some earlier stories to start out with. Like I said, she was a wonderful woman. She was caring when needed, straightforward when needed, and would call you on your bullshit when she needed to. She was a wonderful woman of an example for young girls, for young ladies, and for women. I want to first share a story from my childhood. Obviously, I grew up from wonderful parents and a privileged life, and grateful to my parents for this. And Tommy and Rose were part of that my whole life. And my sister and I's favorite Christmas present was Rosemary. We spent our childhood at their home every Saturday on an away game, watching a New Year's Eve and July 4th and whenever else. We were all there, all us kids, all the Hannie kids, all the Bonacast kids, and it was just like, and all the adults. And they brought us over, they would have this cheese dip. It was in this like heated platter, and it literally was nacho cheese and a can of chili. But my sister and I thought that it was the best thing that we had ever eaten, because my mom didn't let us eat food like that. But Tommy had it to the day, the last party he had it there. And so they wrapped us up in a garbage bag, a bag of Tostitos, a can of nacho cheese, and a can of chili, Hormel chili, tied a ribbon on it and wrote the recipe, Rosemary did. And my sister and I thought that we had won the lottery. She paid attention to what you loved. I want to share another story, a little bit one of more mischievous story from our childhood that Todd was rightly involved in. I think we were in the 8th grade at New Year's Eve, and their next door neighbors, if you were looking at their house, it was the next door neighbors on the left, and they, I'm sure wonderful people, but they were shooting. Todd had his best friend over, I had my best friend over, Lee had her best friend over, I'm sure Lewis had a friend over, I'm sure, I don't even remember, there was tons of people there. And there were high school older kids next door, and they were like high school age. And at the time, I only remember it being Todd as I as the oldest kids there, and I could be wrong. But they were shooting, so we had fireworks, and they were shooting fireworks at us. And, we started shooting them back. And Todd's best friend, Brian D'Agostino, was a wild man. And he was literally shooting them under their cars in their garage, like it was a carport. So, just blowing things up. But they had started it. The owner of the house, the neighbor, comes charging out of the house, screaming at us, and out comes my dad in his face, and Tommy's out there, and they're just sticking up for us because we were just having fun, and they started it. And Rosemary told me later on in life that even in her final days, she said, we talked about that story, memory a lot. And she said, you know, we never ever did talk to our neighbors ever again. She was like, not that I have anything wrong with it, but I don't know. And they talked to all of their other neighbors, so it was really a funny situation. Rosemary came to, and Tommy. I was a cheerleader in high school. They came to every Friday night Episcopal game and watched me cheer. They traveled to New Orleans when I cheered for Episcopal against Newman when Peyton was the quarterback and at Newman. And my boyfriend was the quarterback, not at the time, of Episcopal. And so it was Newman and Episcopal were a huge rivalry. And so they came to every game. My aunt and uncles, I don't know if they saw me cheer. I'm sure they saw me cheer maybe once, but they were there. These people loved me, and I loved them. As I grew into a woman, Rosemary would always check on me. She would ask me about my education, what I was into, my life, my work goals, She never said, why aren't you married yet? Who are you not dating? And that was a question that I have gotten my whole life in this community. And she never once said that you need to get a man. She said, you're better off on your own. I had a tragic loss in my life. My boyfriend of many years, who I believe we probably would have married, was killed in a car accident right outside of Tommy and Rose's home on Highland Road. And Rosemary, they were there for the days after. And I remember her just holding me while I was just crying. And I just couldn't see how I was going to take a step forward. She would call me at the University of Colorado in Boulder, because that's where I went to school and I returned. And she would check on me because she knew I was struggling. And she always remembered, and she always asked me if I was okay. Rosemary remembered. She remembered you and about your life. So, after, Tommy obviously was a huge part of my life as well. But once Tommy and my dad and Tommy were friends from young children, so literally he's had him his whole life, long before my mom, long before any of us. And so when he passed, he asked my dad and my family to help look after Rosemary. Well, I had always loved Rosemary, and I would go over after she came to live with us for a couple of weeks after Tom's death. But that wasn't sustainable for her. She wanted to be in her home and independent. She was independent. And we know that she was suffering from dementia. And she could fool people maybe if you met in a grocery store for a few minutes, but if you spend any longer than 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you knew Rosemary, you knew that, she wasn't she could remember stories from I'm telling you, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, she could tell me every trip she ever went on. But it was the daily things that she would forget. And it was hard for her. And so after many months of just going over every day and bringing her dinner, because Rosemary didn't know how to boil water. I don't know if everyone knows that, but she did not cook, right? Tom cooked. And they ate out a lot. So I would either pick up dinner or cook her dinner. And then it just, as she was declining, my dad and I talked about it with Rosemary, and she would ask me to spend the night all the time. And then I would leave, and then I'd come back, and I felt bad. And the hurricane had come, I think it was in August, and I ended up staying because she was losing power. And then I never left her. And so for almost 2 years, or really a year and like 8 months, we spent every day together. She was my best friend. She was my mentor. She was someone I deeply cared for and loved. We shared more than I've shared with so many people in my life. She told me stories. We talked about everything: politics, religion, families, mom and dads that make you mad, brothers and sisters, anybody. We loved them all. She talked to me how much she loved her sister Dot and how proud that she was of her sister, and that she was wondered if that she knew how much that she loved you, and how proud she was of you, and how much she loved Cindy, even though she was sometimes difficult to put up with when you were in her space. 90% of the time, I would even go to say 95% of the time, Rosemary and I had some of the best times in the last 2 years that I could have ever had. We laughed so much. It was unbelievable. We laughed about how she couldn't remember stuff. She was aware. I cooked every meal. It was like we were we were a partnership, really. That's my healthiest live-in partnership in a long time. And she was, but every now and then, she would forget while I was there. And she would be like, "What are you doing in my house?" And I'd be like, "Rosemary, I live here, but if you want me to go," and she'd be like, "No. But I could tell y'all so many stories. And she would cuss me out every now and then. And I would sometimes yell back, but I would never cuss because I was raised better than that. She would throw that F word out at me at the end. But I didn't care. She didn't mean it. And she hugged me and told me she loved me every night. And I loved her. She was one of the most amazing women that I had ever been privileged to have loved me and to have known me and to have known my entire life. I am so sorry for her family. I know that I feel like her family too, but to Trey and Mark, to Mark's girlfriend Linda, to Ella, to Julie and Todd and Kathy who are here, and their brother. I know that this is just another loss. It's been the third in a very short time, and it's been hard for all of you, I know. And I love you all, and I hope that we can all remember Rosemary, Tom, Johnny, and just with such love and laughter.
And Julie Hannie.
Please forgive me, y'all. Forgive me for not having any actual prepared remarks. But I want to start by thanking Lizzie for those beautiful comments and for all your care for my beloved Aunt Rosemary and for the entire Bonacaz family for helping in those days and recent years. It's been a rough few years for our family, as Liz mentioned, starting with my father's passing on April 8th, 2020, the loss of my Uncle Tommy on February 12th, 2021, and now my Aunt Rosemary, the end of last year, unexpectedly. It was certainly a shock for me and my entire family to learn of her loss. One thing I know about my Aunt Rosemary is that she truly, truly loved our family. And when I say our family, I mean our immediate family and our extended, large Hannie family. She really, really loved all of us. And I loved her very much. I saw the love that she had for my uncle, my father, my mother, my brothers, and of course, Mark, Trey, and Ella. I was blessed to have had her as my aunt, and I remember when they moved from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. My family grew up here, and my uncle and his family lived in New Orleans for many years. And she was so supportive of wanting to come here to Baton Rouge to be closer to our family, which she really embraced. I have so many wonderful memories of spending time at their house on Jean Lafitte for family gatherings, holidays, and of course, those same memories at my own parents' house. And I'm just gonna always cherish those memories and remember those times. I can tell you life's not the same without all of them. It's just changed. But I personally have faith in knowing that they are at peace and they are happy. When I heard the beautiful hymn this morning at the piano, that's definitely something that I really remember and appreciate about Rosemary, is her talent as a classical pianist and her love for music. And I share that same passion, and especially with the piano. I just thank all of you for being here today to share and celebrate her life and remember her legacy. And I know she's going to be missed by so many friends. She was such a loyal friend as well as loyal family member. Life is precious and every day is a gift, and I know I certainly feel that more these days.
So thank you for being her friends, and God bless.
Tom used to take me to lunch periodically, which was always treacherous. He had 3 things he usually wanted to communicate to me. One was something about how scandalous his life was. One was something to see if he could get a reaction out of me. And the third, and it would vary which happened in what order. And the third was how much he loved and respected Rosemary. Without fail. I mean, I'm sure you know, he would just, everything was a little more inflated in his stories. So I could never tell if she actually was like the former president of the entire country or not. So I wanted also some of the elements. The reading that we heard before was written by someone who came out of this church. And the hymn we're about to sing came from a member of this church. Earl Ramsdell wrote the words for this. Let's go ahead and rise in body or spirit.
Of thousands
So actually, I'm going to invite us into a moment of prayer and reflection. That great mystery that holds all of us together that some call God. Whatever that thing is that brought life to Rosemary and brought that life out into the world. Be with us on this day and hold her family both of choice and of birth. Hold all those who knew her life. Hold all those who add this death onto another death and another. Help us to be grateful for all of the gifts we've been given. Help us to let her story live on. Help us to let her joy live on. May her story bring about more love and more peace and more justice to this world. Amen. So I'm going to invite you into a litany. After each sentence, I'll invite you to say, "We remember her." In the rising of the sun and when it goes down, in the blowing of the wind and the chill of winter, in the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, in the blueness of sky and the warmth of summer, in the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, when we hold our own with big personalities, when we listen to piano or go running, when we hold a governor accountable. So long as we live, she too shall live. Some logistics really quickly, and then we'll conclude the service. After the service, Trey has taken her ashes, and some we are going to scatter. These, I believe, are going to go with Dot to Alabama. But I will invite all of you to join us out at the Peace Meadow, where we scatter ashes of many church members and friends. Afterwards, there is a reception here. That is where the retelling really begins. So please stay, please talk with each other. Let her story live on. Rosemary Parkle Hannie died a few months ago. She lived a long and very powerful life. She lived on this earth for more than 80 years, and now her body has given all that it can. It was given over to the purifying flame. Some of her remains will be scattered here, some at her and Tom's house, some will be left at her parents' grave. So while Rosemary's life has ended, her impact will live on through all of us, through our stories, and how we carry her legacy going forward. May she be at peace. May you know peace. Amen. Let's sing a song that's going to try and lift you up to get you out of here. This is one we sing in this church a lot.
Still my pride and heart
when a wave ends, the ocean doesn't disappear, but the shoreline is forever changed. Go in peace. Go in love. Amen. And please follow us in.